All right, so I'm going to just talk about my whole theory and approach to chess. And this is a very good example of a game. I didn't make any mistakes in this entire game, but I also didn't make any quote unquote great or brilliant moves as per the engine. So it's a lot of basic fundamental chess playing here. And you can see that my elo is quite low. Don't let that elo fool you. I think I'm quite a bit more advanced than that. It's just that I haven't really played competitive online. I tend to just play as a guest, and I've been doing a lot of that for the past couple months. So this doesn't really reflect my chess.com rating per se. Now the Justin Reid bot is 1300. 1300 is very deceptive as well. The Justin Reid bot is probably more of a 1600 bot. So we'll see how I pretty much methodically took apart this Reid bot and did a pretty good job of it in this game. So I would consider myself still beginner novice level, and I'll just talk things through, and you're going to hear my analysis based on my understanding of the game. So we're looking at this board, and I tend to play the Colle system, and that's my opening typically. It's a very friendly opening, very strong development at the beginning, and gives you a lot of options, and it goes from defensive to offensive all of a sudden. So I really like that about this system. So you start with pawn e, pawn d4, and it doesn't matter what the opponent does. You basically will typically defend that pawn with the knight. And what I also want to say is my approach to chess, I forgot, I should have said this at the beginning, is I am a positional chess player where I basically try to establish as much positional advantages at the beginning in my opening and early mid game. And what I'm trying to do is also inconvenience my opponent as much as possible. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And basically, once I get a chance to fork or pin and take advantage of a fork or pin tactic and get a piece advantage, then what I do is I aggressively trade to get to the end game where I'll sustain that advantage, and then I'll convert that advantage into a win by advancing my pawn to the end and getting a queen typically, and then getting a checkmate. That's usually my game plan. Yes, of course, not a very advanced level of chess. This is still, I'm again a novice, beginner to novice level, and that's just my approach to the game. All right, so next they do that. I continue the Colle setup. They continue to push some pawns up, whatever. Now, see, this is something that I like about the Colle system. Notice how the knight, the knight that Justin Reid advanced is now losing a square. They lost control of the e4 square because the bishop is attacking it now. All right, they're advancing. They're attacking my knight. So another thing that you do typically in the Colle system is you'll have the knight defend the knight, and then they're advancing a pawn. So I need to watch out. So basically, I'm going to advance my pawn to create breathing room for my bishop. And then they move they advance a pawn, fine. Now look, what people often do at this time is castle, but I like to create more inconveniences. So that's where my mindset is. And so I'm going to push my pawn, my pawn to h3. There you go. Now the bishop now their knight is even more inconvenienced. They can't really occupy the g4 square anymore. And then they advance. Now this is a mistake that I do next. I should take that free pawn, but because I'm so fixated on system development, I just go ahead and castle. I should not have done that. But in the future, I'll probably be better. You know, I'm continuously trying to develop my game, but I castle. I should have taken that free pawn. And they attack my bishop, which is good. I just slide it back. That's the typical response to that if you're playing the Colle system. They advance another pawn, fine. I advance I then shore up my e3 pawn by defending it with my rook, and the idea is to now push that pawn up to take more control of the center. So I do that. Now, there's a decision to be made here. Do I do the typical pawn push and kick the knight, or do I take the pawn to the left on d5 and set up a fork? And I prefer to do that. Why? Because it's always, just a typical principle here. It's better to take up this fork than, kind of get jammed up and put that pawn up this time. If basically, I would say take up fork over a kick, typically. So rather than kick the knight, I'd rather fork, where I can kick a knight, or they can just trade pieces. But anyway, that's what I'm doing here. They trade, and yep. Now, what do I do next? I can't exactly remember. I think I move my knight up. Yep, I did that. I'm not sure exactly the strategy at this point, but I think, a knight in the center occupies a lot of, attacks a lot of squares, so I thought that would probably be a good idea. So now this is a mistake that the computer made. They're attacking my knight. Now I'm looking at a forking opportunity because I can fork the queen and the bishop. And, taking bishops is better than trading a bishop for a knight is usually a good move. So I do that. They move the bishop. And now, look, they didn't even move the queen, so I'm going to continue to attack. And I fork. And this is a great fork because now I get a free pawn. So the queen has to move. The queen moves. I take my... And it leads to a check. So it's pretty beautiful when you just... Every step you're taking is leading to an advantageous move. So it's pretty nice. And now I can take another free pawn. Boom. And now I don't know what the opponent does next. Let's see what he does. Now, like I said, I like to take pawns, but I like to trade knights for bishops. That's what I did. There you go. Now I think the strategy would be there's a chance to now pin the knight and the queen. The Colle system is so great. You get all these opportunities to pin and fork. It's really nice. So, but instead, I guess I decided to move the knight up. Why? I don't know. Okay. It is well defended, so I figured that that's a nice move to take, so I do that. Now I might see a pin between the bishop and the knight. Sorry, bishop and the rook, so I go ahead. Oh, no. I decided to take the... Well, duh. Of course I'm going to take the knight. That makes sense. And then they move the king up. Not sure what they're trying to do here, so that's when I do this pin, and of course they're just going to trade logically. So I take and take, and then they make a move. That was kind of a dumb move because now I get a chance to trade the kind of trade I like to do, and then they do that. So I go ahead and trade, and now again, like I said, I like to trade when I'm up 3 points, right? So I go ahead and trade. I check the king, and then more trades happen. Trade. And basically now I have a passed pawn. There's nothing blocking my pawn to castle. So I do that. And I'm happy to trade. So we trade. And then we have a nice, simple checkmate. So this is a fairly well-played fundamental game of chess. The rating they gave me was 1700, and as you can see, 0 brilliant moves, 0 great moves, 0 mistakes, 0 misses, 0 blunders. So a very tight game where I played a lot of the best engine moves, and so I think I'm on the right track.